Welcome to the Digital Enterprise Society podcast, addressing all aspects of the digital enterprise, inspiring connection without boundaries and creation without limits. Thank you for tuning in. Here are your hosts, Thom Singer and Craig Brown.
Well, hello there. You have found your way to another episode of the Digital Enterprise Society podcast. Thank you so much for continuing to come back every week to listen to the people that we interview on this show, because we designed this show to be a resource for those who work in and around PLM. The Digital Enterprise Society is a forum for the exchange of ideas surrounding the tools, processes, and practices used across the product lifecycle. To learn more, visit digitalenterprisesociety.org. My name is Thom Singer, and I have the honor to co-host this show every week with Craig Brown. Craig is an industry veteran and former PLM leader at General Motors. Hey, Craig, how are you?
I'm good, Thom. It's good to hear your voice. Former leader, it's been 2 years since I retired. It's hard to believe, and there's also hard to believe what else has happened in the past year.
It has been a busy 2 years. I know that we started the Digital Enterprise Society podcast. That was one big thing. There was a global pandemic. That was another big thing.
Now, today's guest is a return guest, and she was with us just before we all started dealing with the pandemic. And I thought it would be interesting to go back to some of the initiatives that she's championing, and then talk about how did it help get through the pandemic, or well, we're not through it yet. We're in the middle of the pandemic.
Awesome. Well, yeah, every single week, Craig and I try to bring to this show very interesting interviews and other ideas that are going to help all of the listeners enhance and grow their careers. And today we have Susanne Lauda. She is the Director of Global Advanced Manufacturing Technology at AGCO. And what she does is, in her job, she uses the latest technology to improve her company's productivity. And I'll tell you what, she also recently won an award as one of the 20 most influential women in automation and robotics from the Society of Manufacturing Engineers. Hey, Susanne, welcome back to the Digital Enterprise Society podcast.
Thank you so much for having me back on this call.
So, Susanne, just to update the listeners, can you give us a little bit of your background? I know they could go back and listen to the show that we did a year ago, but tell us a little bit about the journey that led you to where you are today.
Yeah, I actually started my career as an apprentice on the shop floor in a different century, in a different millennium. And I basically grew with the technology in manufacturing. I grew into my current position at AGCO.
Susanne, it's glad to hear you again. Can you remember what we were thinking a year ago as we chatted? It was all about digital technologies, and I think electronic work instructions came up in our talk. We even talked about how to map a factory so that you could digitize it. And it wasn't but about a month later, we all got told to go work at home or thereabouts. And so I'm just curious, you said one of AGCO's big initiatives is design anywhere and build anywhere. And with the advent of the pandemic, and especially the way it's been happening around the world at different paces, at different intensities, how has that helped you and your company, this design anywhere, build anywhere, in the context of the pandemic?
Yeah, I would say especially the build anywhere has proven to be a lifesaver for us, because we had to actually shut down plants mandatorily. Governments in certain regions demanded that we shut down our plants. And so we were able to ramp up the production at other sites. And so we were able to fulfill our orders.
Excellent. And while you're talking about orders, so it's been interesting to watch which companies have done fine, which companies have struggled, and even some companies have expanded because their ability, I guess, to be able to pivot and deal with these challenges, they've done it better than most. How about you guys? How about orders? Are orders still okay in your industry, or have they been impacted by this?
No, we are actually had a very good 2020. People still need food. Our company is considered essential. So we were able to produce, and our products are flying hot off the press, so to speak, because farmers need to also adjust to disruptions in their supply chain,
right,
and also to adjust to changes in the markets. Remember that there was a lot of problems with the meat processing plants. Mm-hmm. So at the same time, when the meat processing plants had to shut down, the consumers changed to more health-conscious diets. And so now they are looking for food that's prepared from scratch. They are looking for sustainability. They are looking for animal welfare. And we were able to adjust to that also extremely fast and could support our customers, our farmers, with new products and new technologies that they needed in return to adjust to that changed market environment.
So this is interesting, and I hope everybody listening, you know, one of the benefits of being digital, of having not just design and engineering being electronic, but also having your factories being flexible and being able to adjust to a different kind of product, fairly quickly, especially when something like this hits. The whole food supply chain has been really disrupted. I mean, what you described, we're an example of that. We have bought more and more organic food from wherever it's produced in the North American continent, and we help distribute it. Right? I mean, we have a service that brings a semi truck once a month, and we help that. And those orders, the orders in that this organic farm that does this, we went from like $1,000 a month to over $6,000, and it's a disruption in food is maybe not a surprise, but certainly terrifying at times. So what's the best thing about your digital initiatives? And maybe you've already answered this, but what was the best thing? What surprised you?
Well, I mean, what really surprised me the most, that we could change to home office environment overnight, literally overnight. I mean, one day we announced there will be home office all over the globe. The next day, everybody was in home office. It was very, very little disruption, if not.
Now I get how engineering and planning and even management could be at the home office, but what about folks on the floor? You still need people in the factory, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But even on the shop floor, digital tools help more people to work from home, especially the ones that are doing the planning. They can actually work better from home now with digital tools, with virtual tools. And on the other side, let's talk about other technologies, for instance, 3D printing. Also, almost overnight, we were able to print our own protective face shields for our workers on the shop floor and issue those and make sure that they are protected as well as possible. And
did you design your own, or did you take a design and manufacture it?
No, we designed our own, even with our brand logos.
Okay, well, so this is another benefit of being digital, and including things like flexible 3D printing, is you can build anything, right? You're a manufacturing expert, so applying those skills elsewhere. Now, are you entering the protective equipment business? Because there seems to be shortages that there shouldn't be, right?
Yes and no. I mean, we were always helping out through that pandemic in our communities. Mm-hmm. So we had the locations that were built, that we were building hospital beds and distributing in. And then we had, places where we produced those face masks. And those face masks went to our own workers, but they also went out to frontline workers, police and nurses and whatnot, wherever needed. So we actually produced more than we could consume within AGCO. We also made sure that our community could benefit from it.
Excellent. And that I think is there's a lot of examples of that where local factories are helping the people that are around their vicinity. And it's just wonderful. I mean, people need to be flexible. They need to listen to each other, and they need to be helpful during these times. Now, so your orders have been fine. What about your supply chain? Did you have suppliers that Yeah, we could see each other's face. I saw that laugh. Do you have suppliers that had trouble during this time, and how did digital help that?
We have suppliers that we share with the automotive industry, and compared to automotive, we are a small customer. So when automotive tanked, some of those customers shut down, at least temporarily, and others actually had issues because they had too many people calling in sick. However, we already had a risk avoidance strategy in place before the pandemic, and that proved to be very successful. So we may not have been able to deliver exactly to the configuration as the customer wanted it, but with some minor adjustments, we were able to at least deliver what the customer needed.
Yeah, and that's another degree of flexibility where customers just be open-minded because you found a solution that would give them a working product, even if it wasn't the exact specifications. And I think, again, a lot of us have learned to be more flexible if we weren't before. So that's interesting that you have suppliers that were impacted by a bigger industry, and then they had their own challenges, and so finding alternative parts or alternative assemblies, that's a really good idea. And of course, that's easier with digital technologies, right? It's very easy to quickly figure out if something will fit or something will function properly.
Absolutely.
So going back to what we talked about a year ago, you talked about the importance of the digital thread correctness, and you've clearly had to rely on it in this past year. Have there been surprises or maybe a better word is discoveries you've made about the correctness of the digital thread and how important that is?
Yeah, I think not just us, but many companies have realized that they need remote working options even for the shop floor. And this really means that virtual tools are gaining importance. But we should not just focus on the shop floor, we also focus on our end customer. And here the communication with our customers is happening remotely now. And that means that the service department needs correct product information by looking at, for instance, a digital twin, because they cannot look at the actual product. They cannot go out into the field and look what configuration that tractor or that combine or whatever is currently in. So they have to have correct information. And you can only have that if you have a correct digital twin.
So that's a good example. That's a principle in quality management. Go and see. Well, now with the threat of our health, we have to go and see by looking at the virtual twin, the digital twin. So of course it has to be accurate, and especially if you had one of those parts change because of a supplier disruption, right? So exactly. This is really interesting. Well, yourselves, I mean, can you summarize for us the amount of the workforce that's working from home? I think people get how engineering and planning could be work at home, and a lot of companies have said they're doing okay there. But how many of your population of the manufacturing workers had to be on site, or can there were installation station? Can they run it remotely? Are there those kinds of operations?
Well, we still need people on the shop floor. I mean, there is no doubt that we still have to have presence on the shop floor. The good news is that with the developments that we have made over the last few years, we do not have to have heavily manned stations.
Okay. So
we are able to maintain social distances on the shop floor because we need fewer people than we needed maybe 5-10 years ago. And then I spoke about manufacturing engineers earlier. In cases where we had very high incidence of COVID, for instance, in northern Italy, that was hit early with the pandemic, we changed to a 50% remote office policy. So our manufacturing engineers spent 2 or 3 days in the office and worked 2 or 3 days from home. That's helping us also to ensure that they were socially distanced.
So this is, I forgot that, of course, you were founded in Italy. The lessons learned from Italy, how fast did you get those to your other manufacturing sites around the world? Because the wave, New York City, Italy, and a few other places were the first wave, and some people learned and a lot of people didn't. Did you set up something special so that your other factories would learn from Northern Italy?
Well, we actually got hit even earlier because our plant in China was the first one to be impacted, but Italy followed very closely. And yes, we learned lessons really fast, especially when it came to social distancing, when it came to how to make sure that we sanitize everything correctly, to make sure that we did, for instance, temperature measures. So we even in China, right away, we started checking temperatures of everybody who entered the plant, left the plant, and the same in Italy. And I have to say, I mean, we are very proud that the percentage of our employees, including shop floor, that contracted COVID compared to the global average is much, much, much lower. So we must have done a really good job.
Well, yeah, and we're hearing stories of, though not as many as I would like, about the people that are successfully managing it, right? I mean, come on, everybody. Some of it's as simple as just wear the mask, but
yes.
But yeah, social distance and keep your face covered for now and wash your hands a lot, and you can manage through this. Well,
sanitize surfaces, and yes, right. and the temperature checks and logs who is in the plant, who is not in the plant. Yes.
Are you? I'm just curious. Are you also doing contact tracing, because this recent B117 variant is starting to scare people, and maybe justifiably, since it seems to be a bit more past easier. It's not really contagious. It's a different mechanism. But my point is that part of the things you did was just make people aware that we needed to be aware of who else they were in contact with?
I don't think, I could be wrong. I don't think we do a formal contact tracing, but again, we know exactly who was in the plant when, so we keep record.
So when they contact the plant for sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. So I was studying the history a little bit about the Society of Manufacturing Engineers, and I've never been a member, but I've been hearing about them forever. And so I find it interesting that it was all about tooling in the plants. Now we're talking about the 1930s, the 1920s.
Yeah.
And I find it interesting that your position is about tooling, but it's a different kind of tooling, right? It's computer-based tooling to make continue to make the plants more and more efficient. So I'm impressed that the SME is paying attention to the evolution of digital technologies. And in particular, the area you mentioned of the award is for robotics and automation. But that automation is more than just moving material. It's also automating parts of decision-making, I assume.
Absolutely.
And this is a competitive advantage. I mean, maybe people know this, but if they don't know it, they should be working on it. So it's interesting. Tooling, and congratulations, by the way, on your award.
Thank you.
We need more of us that understand that the future is digital, and that it's not to be scared of it. It's rather to embrace it. And maybe it'll automate your job away, but that's okay. There'll be other jobs that need to be done, including how to be resilient when there's a pandemic. But in any case, so what's your hope for how this thing ends, this pandemic, and what do you think will stay at the company, or industry at large regarding digital technologies?
I think it will actually accelerate the digital transformation, because people realize that the fewer people they have to manage on the shop floor physically, the lower the risk is of spreading dangerous viruses among the workforce. So I think it will give the digital transformation really a boost.
Yeah, and at this point about protection and not spreading the virus, the flu rates in general are way down, right? I mean, it's one good news story, right? Because of all the practices we're following, people aren't getting as sick with the normal flu. And, the other thing that probably will be true is we might end up with an annual shot, right, of the vaccine, just because this particular threat seems to be morphing pretty quickly. So anyways, well, Susanne, it's been very nice chatting with you. Congratulations on your award and on using digital to get through this pandemic and still be a successful company. It's very good. It's really a joy to talk with people and see how they're getting through this. I never would have imagined a year ago we'd be spending time talking about how bored. Oh, that's what it reminds me of. I had one other question. How bored we are all at home. Now, you and I first met at a conference, and I think a couple of times we were at the same conference, and I heard you speak. You know, one of the problems with this pandemic is, other than us reaching out to each other on a podcast, we're really not having these exchanges. Have you come across anything to help that, besides talking to Thom and I?
Yeah, I mean, within AGCO, we have been meeting now via Teams for about 11 months. And although we learned that many meetings can be held in a virtual environment, others really, really require to be in person, especially the ones where you need to have a long attention span or where you rely on human interactions. Social contacts are how we build strong alliances. I mean, that's how our DNA is basically is. So as far as AGCO is concerned, we do not have a firm date yet when we can start traveling again. We are pretty optimistic that the vaccination will help with that, but of course it depends how soon those vaccinations can be distributed and also how efficient they are. So we are basically still watching and waiting, but when it opens up, we are ready to go.
Well, and I think it'll be regional, right? I mean, there'll be places like maybe within the United States or North America, we can see each other, maybe if we're lucky, by the fall. But there might be other places in the world where you might have plants where you just can't go there yet, right? They're just at different phases. So, well, thanks again. It's been a joy chatting with you, and good luck with the pandemic. And maybe we should make this an annual thing. We'll see where you're at a year from now.
Exactly.
And if we're really lucky, we'll do it face to face, and Thom and I will interview you at whatever conference we all end up at. Okay.
And since it's winter, hopefully we will be in Brazil, where it's summer at this point.
That's right.
Or Hawaii.
A nice conference in Honolulu sounds great about right now.
There we go. We go. I was just thinking about our plant locations, so Brazil comes to mind.
So,
okay.
Susanne,
just make sure they get the vaccine, okay?
Exactly.
So, Susanne, before we let you go, I always like to ask our guests a little bit of career advice. And you won this award as one of the 20 most influential women in your space. How does a younger person who's building their career, what are some steps that they should take early on to be able, not to win an award, but to be able to position themselves as an expert and to be able to grow their career to that level? What are some tips you have for people? Well,
first of all, no matter if this young person is male or female, don't be afraid of technology. And I think the younger generation is not anymore because they grow up with it. So that's the first step. And the second step is get exposure to the manufacturing environment, because still I think there is a little bit of an old-fashioned image of manufacturing around. So get exposure, maybe do an internship. Actually, we offer great internships also. Do an internship, learn more about what it is all about in manufacturing, and then start creating your own network and go from there.
So how important is it for people who are on that up and coming side of their career to attend these industry conferences? Before the pandemic hit, I was speaking or being the master of ceremonies for a lot of companies and a lot of organizations in manufacturing, and there didn't seem to be a whole slew of younger people in attendance. So how important is it for younger people to get involved in the manufacturing industry?
I think it's very important to get involved early, because I just used the word network. You have to have a good network in order to place yourself well within the manufacturing environment. Not only because you want to advance your career by having the right contacts, but also by learning from others.
Awesome. Well, Susanne, thank you for being here and sharing your expertise with Craig and I and with the greater community of the Digital Enterprise Society. And remember, everybody, we're here every week. Craig and I get really excited every time we get to log on and interview somebody else who is really smart, like Susanne. So we want you to join us next week for more thoughts, ideas, and information in and around product lifecycle management. The Digital Enterprise Society, it is the place for the exchange of ideas around digital manufacturing tools. Go check us out at digitalenterprisesociety.org.
You've been listening to the Digital Enterprise Society podcast. Learn more about what you've heard here today at digitalenterprisesociety.org. Join us again next week for more connection without boundaries and creation without limits.